Most people never rise because they're ruled by invisible chains, not by enemies, not by fate, but by fear. Fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of being judged, fear of failing in front of others. They call it anxiety, insecurity, doubt. Machiavelli would call it what it really is: mental obedience. Because fear is not just an emotion, it is a training tool, a system installed into your mind by culture, by weakness, by memory. And unless you erase it, you will always submit before you strike. This is Machiavelli's Neuro-Conditioning method, a brutal mental reprogramming strategy designed to kill hesitation, kill guilt, kill emotional noise, and leave only clarity. Precision ice. It does not involve therapy. It does not require journaling. It does not care about feeling better. This is the method for the man who doesn't want comfort. He wants power. And to get that, he must erase fear from the root. The modern man believes fear is natural, but Machiavelli would disagree. Fear is installed. It is taught to you by weak parents who warned you not to stand out, by teachers who punished you for speaking without raising your hand, by friends who laughed at your confidence, by failure that you never properly reframed, and by a society that survives on control, not freedom. Fear is not your flaw. It is your programming. And that means it can be rewired. But first it must be dragged out of the shadows and exposed. Because most men walk through life thinking they are strategizing, when in truth they're avoiding fear under the illusion of being smart. They say now is not the right time. I'm just being realistic. I'll wait until I'm more ready. But all of that is fear, wearing a suit and tie. Clean, polished, reasonable, but still fear. Machiavelli would say, the mind must be brutalized before it can become sovereign. Meaning your brain must be taught who is master again, not through inspiration, but through cold conditioning. This is the first and most violent shift. You are not afraid. You are a man experiencing fear, and that experience is just data. You must learn to stand outside of it, to feel the fear and dissect it like a threat, not a truth. You must remove phrases like, I'm scared, I'm not ready, this makes me anxious, and replace them with, there is fear present. This is a surge. It will pass. What data does this fear contain? Because once you stop believing, fear is you. It becomes a thing, and things can be broken, rewired, redirected. The foolish man tries to push through fear. The Machiavellian man investigates it like a crime scene. Because fear is rarely real. It's a loop from the past, echoing in your nervous system like a broken alarm. Your job? Disable the alarm, not justify its noise. You don't erase fear by hiding from it. You erase it by starving it of impact. Fear needs your response to stay alive. It feeds on hesitation. It feeds on overthinking. It feeds on avoidance. So, you do the opposite. Every day, you voluntarily touch fear, ritually, deliberately, coldly. Not once a month. Not when life challenges you. Every single day. Say the hard truth, no one else will. Post what you're afraid of being judged for. Walk into the conversation you've been avoiding. Break the rule you were taught to obey without thinking. But here's the catch. You don't do it for adrenaline. You do it for reprogramming. You're not trying to conquer fear. You're training your nervous system to become numb to it. Because the more often you touch the edge, the less power it has. Eventually, the fear circuit stops firing. It's a gradual process. Imagine your body as a high-performance machine that's been programmed to react a certain way. Every time you touch fear deliberately, you teach your brain that fear no longer has power over you. It is no longer a threat. It is just another stimulus. And when the brain starts recognizing fear as a neutral signal, its grip loosens. But this takes repetition. You don't break fear with a single brave act. It requires 1,000 tiny revolutions. Each moment of discomfort is a brick in the fortress of your mind, a barrier between you and the hold fear once had. Think of it like learning to lift weights. The first time you pick up a heavy barbell, your muscles shake, your body protests. But the more you lift, the stronger your muscles get. Fear is no different. At first it feels overwhelming. You tremble, sweat, and retreat. But with every confrontation, you build tolerance, and eventually, the weight becomes lighter. Your brain starts reprogramming itself with a new foundation. The fear that once controlled you is slowly replaced with the clarity and precision of someone who operates without hesitation. Every time you feel fear rise, stop. Instead of running from it, you face it. Feel it coursing through your body. Notice the anxiety building in your chest. That is not a signal to stop. That is the moment you step forward. With every action you take in spite of that fear, you rewrite the script. You begin to see the fear not as a warning, but as an opportunity to grow stronger, to prove to yourself that it holds no power. It is like the fire that refines steel. It may burn, but it also strengthens. And in this fire, you forge the mind of a man who no longer submits to fear. But it's important to understand, this is not about the adrenaline rush of confronting your fear in a brave, heroic moment. It's about reprogramming your nervous system over and over. To see fear for what it truly is, an echo from the past, a programmed response that no longer serves you. You're not doing it for the thrill of breaking through. You're doing it for the peace of mind that comes with knowing that fear no longer owns you. Fear is often the result of unresolved memories, trauma, or failures that we've never reframed. They linger in your mind, whispering warnings, like a distant alarm. But the more you confront it, the less power it has. Every time you break through, every time you push forward, you build momentum. Your body begins to trust that fear no longer has control over your choices. The more often you defy it, the less likely it becomes to paralyze you. Imagine waking up every day and setting out to meet fear head-on. No longer do you run from the discomfort of awkward conversations, of taking risks, of doing things that make you feel small. Instead, you walk into them. Each challenge is a step toward erasing the root of fear from your mind. And soon, you begin to realize that the things that once terrified you are nothing but fleeting moments. They pass. They are not permanent. Fear is a guest. It doesn't stay forever unless you invite it to. But even more importantly, every time you refuse to let fear control you, you take back control of your life. The more you face the things you fear, the more your mind becomes conditioned to resist the urges to retreat. You're not just becoming fearless in the face of fear. You're becoming a master of your own psychology. You're rewriting your narrative, showing yourself and the world that you are the one who controls how fear impacts you, not the other way around. So when fear speaks, you don't ignore it, but you don't let it stop you either. You take a deep breath, and in that breath, you find strength. You hold your ground, refusing to let fear dictate your choices. Eventually, this practice becomes second nature. The more you repeat it, the stronger you grow. You no longer think about fear the way you once did. You don't negotiate with it. You don't try to understand it. You act. And when you act, fear no longer has the chance to overwhelm you. Instead, you master it. This isn't about running from the pain or discomfort. It's about conditioning your mind to see it as a catalyst for transformation. It's about embracing discomfort as a sign that you're growing, not shrinking. Every time you move through the fear, you shift closer to your true potential. Every confrontation, every step forward in the face of anxiety is a victory over the loops that once bound you. And soon, you find yourself in control, not of fear, but of your own destiny. That's not courage. That's conditioning. Your brain obeys what it sees repeatedly. Right now, fear shows you disaster. You'll get rejected. You'll be humiliated. You'll lose everything. This creates paralysis. So, you use Machiavelli's method. You invert the imagery. Every time fear speaks, you close your eyes and recode the outcome. Not with fantasy, but with dominance. For example, fear says, if you say that, she'll walk away. You counter. Good. Let her walk. The next one will respect silence. Then you see that outcome. Her walking, and you coldly unbothered. Fear says, if you fail, they'll laugh. You counter. Let them. Their laughter will become silence when I return, sharper. Then see the silence. Feel their tension. You're not escaping the fear. You're rewriting the emotional meaning of the fear. This is neuro-conditioning at warlike scale. You're using visualization not for peace, but for mental superiority. You will never fully erase fear until you replace it. Nature abhors a vacuum. You can't just remove fear and hope. Confidence shows up. You must overwrite fear with code. And that code is philosophy. You need to adopt a mental operating system colder than fear itself. Like pain is proof, I'm leaving average behind. If I lose everything, I become unstoppable. Fear is the enemy's final hope. The more they fear me, the more they will test me. Good. These phrases must not be quotes. They must become mental defaults. You must repeat them until your subconscious believes them more than it believes fear. That's what Machiavelli would do. Not pray, not run, not cry. He would install mental armor. Philosophy that makes fear embarrassing to obey. Because once your mind believes something harder than it fears something, the fear dies quietly, permanently. This is not motivation. This is war. You are reprogramming a mind that's been softened by culture, school, trauma, and emotion. Machiavelli's method is not gentle. It is surgical. He would not ask, "How do you feel?" He would ask, "Who owns your fear? You or your enemies?" Because fear is not just a feeling. It's a currency. And if you're not erasing it, someone else is profiting from it. So you begin now. You stop expressing fear. You stop narrating it. You start handling it like a machine handles data. Cold, efficient, unemotional, unapologetic. Because the day fear stops moving you is the day you start moving the world. You were not born afraid. You were trained to fear by people, by failures, by moments you didn't understand. So your brain did the only thing it knew how to do. It created loops. Loops that now run without permission. Loops that whisper before you speak, that stall your movements, that control your tone, that make you question yourself in the exact moment you should act. Machiavelli's method doesn't comfort these loops. It burns them, because fear is not meant to be understood. It's meant to be broken. And the only way to break it is to go deeper, to stop negotiating with your fear and start rebuilding the entire system that allows it to exist. But here's where it gets intense. Imagine that fear no longer lives in the shadows of your mind. It's no longer an abstract idea lurking in your subconscious, waiting to jump out and paralyze you when you least expect it. No, now you bring it into the light. You understand it, confront it, and learn to wield it like a weapon. The moment fear tries to impose its limitations, you twist its narrative. You redefine it. When fear says, "This is dangerous, you might lose," you rewrite it to say, "This is opportunity. Failure is my fuel, not my defeat." Visualization becomes your greatest ally. Instead of running from the feeling of fear, you embrace it. You face it head on, imagining every possible scenario. But now with the power of mental dominance, you start seeing fear as a tool that you control, not the other way around. Every scenario that plays out in your mind, you reframe it with victory, with control, with a calculated response that you know will elevate you to a higher level. You see the fear, but it doesn't see you. It doesn't define you. The power of this approach is that it's not just theoretical, it's tangible. With every confrontation, with every instance where fear tries to paralyze you, you feel the shift. You notice how the once overwhelming feeling of dread fades into the background. The fear loses its potency, and instead of being something you fight against, it becomes a mere blip on your radar. It's just another obstacle in your path, easily navigated, like any other challenge. But it's important to realize that this doesn't happen overnight. It's a cumulative effect. The more you rewrite these emotional patterns, the stronger your ability to stay mentally superior grows. Imagine visualizing your success with such intensity that you begin to feel the pride of accomplishment before it even happens. Every time you overcome a fear-based thought, you reinforce that visualization. You take control of your own mind, showing it that fear is not only an illusion, but something that can be crushed, remade, and used for your benefit. This is not about confronting fear in one isolated moment. It's about conditioning your mind, your entire system, to stay unwavering in the face of uncertainty. It's about building resilience and mental toughness so deeply that fear doesn't just fade, it becomes irrelevant. With every passing day, the cycle of fear is interrupted, shattered by your deliberate actions, by your insistence on moving forward despite it all. The more you practice this, the more your mental operating system becomes impenetrable. Fear no longer has the ability to cloud your judgment. It can no longer stop you from taking decisive action. The stories you used to tell yourself about failure, rejection, and humiliation lose their grip on you. What once seemed like an insurmountable obstacle now feels like a stepping stone, an inevitable part of your journey that only makes you stronger. As you do this, you'll notice a shift not only within yourself, but in how others perceive you. The way you move through the world becomes different. You no longer hesitate, and people can feel that. They sense the certainty in your actions, in your voice, in your body language. Fear no longer holds power over you, and that powerlessness is something others can pick up on. You become someone who moves with an unshakable purpose. And this transformation doesn't come from some sudden burst of courage. It comes from this slow, methodical reprogramming of your brain to see fear for what it truly is, an illusion. You see, it's not courage that makes someone move without hesitation. It's training. It's the mental conditioning that occurs when you repeatedly act against fear's hold on you. When you make fear irrelevant, you don't have to worry about it anymore. You can then focus on what truly matters: execution. And as you build this new mental framework, the fear that once paralyzed you starts to lose its grip on your life entirely. No longer will you be the person hesitating in the face of opportunity. Instead, you will seize it with cold precision, knowing that fear cannot and will not dictate your actions. It will become background noise, nothing more. You'll move without it, and as you do, you will reshape your life. This is not just a change in behavior. This is a transformation of identity. You no longer see yourself as someone who is affected by fear. You become someone who rewrites the narrative every single time fear tries to take hold. With each victory, with each act of defiance, you ingrain these changes into your psyche, creating a new mental default. Fear is no longer part of your operating system, and once that switch happens, you become unstoppable. You are no longer bound by the chains of hesitation or anxiety. You are free to execute, free to dominate, free to rise. But here's where it gets intense. Imagine that fear no longer lives in the shadows of your mind. It's no longer an abstract idea lurking in your subconscious, waiting to jump out and paralyze you when you least expect it. No, now you bring it into the light. You understand it, confront it, and learn to wield it like a weapon. The moment fear tries to impose its limitations, you twist its narrative. You redefine it. When fear says, "This is dangerous," you might lose. You rewrite it to say, "This is opportunity. Failure is my fuel, not my defeat." Visualization becomes your greatest ally. Instead of running from the feeling of fear, you embrace it. You face it head on, imagining every possible scenario, but now with the power of mental dominance. You start seeing fear as a tool that you control, not the other way around. Every scenario that plays out in your mind, you reframe it with victory, with control, with a calculated response that you know will elevate you to a higher level. You see the fear, but it doesn't see you. It doesn't define you. The power of this approach is that it's not just theoretical, it's tangible. With every confrontation, with every instance where fear tries to paralyze you, you feel the shift. You notice how the once overwhelming feeling of dread fades into the background. The fear loses its potency, and instead of being something you fight against, it becomes a mere blip on your radar. It's just another obstacle in your path, easily navigated, like any other challenge. But it's important to realize that this doesn't happen overnight. It's a cumulative effect. The more you rewrite these emotional patterns, the stronger your ability to stay mentally superior grows. Imagine visualizing your success with such intensity that you begin to feel the pride of accomplishment before it even happens. Every time you overcome a fear-based thought, you reinforce that visualization. You take control of your own mind, showing that fear is not only an illusion, but something that can be crushed, remade, and used for your benefit. This is not about confronting fear in one isolated moment. It's about conditioning your mind, your entire system, to stay unwavering in the face of uncertainty. It's about building resilience and mental toughness so deeply that fear doesn't just fade, it becomes irrelevant. With every passing day, the cycle of fear is interrupted, shattered by your deliberate actions, by your insistence on moving forward despite it all. The more you practice this, the more your mental operating system becomes impenetrable. Fear no longer has the ability to cloud your judgment. It can no longer stop you from taking decisive action. The stories you used to tell yourself about failure, rejection, and humiliation lose their grip on you. What once seemed like an insurmountable obstacle now feels like a stepping stone, an inevitable part of your journey that only makes you stronger. But here's where it gets even more powerful. Once you begin breaking the fear loop, the brain starts adapting. Repetition is the key to this process. You begin to feel the change, the shift in your psyche, when you consistently go against the fear. Each time you face it, you embed this new behavior deeper into your subconscious. Your mind rewires itself to no longer view fear as a threat, but as a signal that you are on the right path. And that shift is vital. Imagine waking up every day and setting out to meet fear head-on. No longer do you run from the discomfort of awkward conversations, of taking risks, of doing things that make you feel small. Instead, you walk into them. Each challenge is a step toward erasing the root of fear from your mind. And soon, you begin to realize that the things that once terrified you are nothing but fleeting moments. They pass. They are not permanent. Fear is a guest. It doesn't stay forever unless you invite it to. And that's the secret. You stop inviting it. You stop letting fear live rent-free in your mind. With each moment of discomfort you choose to face, you take back your power. Fear no longer controls you because you've learned to break the loop, and no longer dictates your actions, your voice, or your tone. Instead, you dictate them. You control how you respond. You break free from the prison that fear has built around your mind. This process doesn't stop at confrontation. It goes even further. Now that you've started interrupting the fear loop, you replace it with something more powerful. Purpose. Purpose doesn't hesitate. Purpose doesn't overthink. Purpose moves forward, regardless of the obstacles, regardless of the discomfort, regardless of the pain. And as you build momentum with purpose, the fear that once held you back becomes irrelevant. It becomes nothing but noise. And soon, that noise fades into silence. The beauty of this is in the repetition. It's not about taking one bold step. It's about the continuous commitment to act despite the fear. It's about reprogramming your brain through consistent action. Each time you choose to act in the face of fear, you're reinforcing that fear no longer controls you. Eventually, the body begins to respond without hesitation. You no longer have to consciously override the fear. Your brain has already adapted. Fear becomes the exception, not the rule. But the most powerful part of all of this is that you no longer need to be afraid of fear itself. Fear is no longer a monster lurking in the dark. It's just a part of the process. And by constantly rewiring your response, you create a new default setting. Courage. Not the kind of courage that comes from fleeting inspiration or adrenaline, but the kind of courage that comes from unshakable certainty. A certainty that no matter what comes your way, you will face it with calm, with precision, with dominance. The more you practice this, the more you'll realize that fear, once your greatest enemy, becomes your greatest ally. It shows you where you can grow, where you need to push harder, where your limits are so you can break them. It teaches you that there is no such thing as failure, only the opportunity to learn and adapt. And with this mindset, fear transforms from a limiting force into the fuel that powers your drive forward. This is the mental fortress that you build with repetition. Fear no longer has the power to freeze you, to make you second-guess yourself, or to hold you back. And the moment fear stops being a barrier is the moment you unlock the true potential within yourself. It's not just a shift in your behavior, it's a shift in your entire way of being. You become someone who moves despite fear, who acts with purpose, and who dominates his reality. In the end, it's not about removing fear entirely. It's about removing its power. Fear is no longer your adversary. It's simply a tool that you've learned to use, a signal to tell you that you're on the right path. And once you reprogram your mind to see fear for what it is, a fleeting and powerless force, you no longer just survive in its presence. You thrive, you create, you conquer.